Hi there. Hey, Lara here. I've got a little sequence for you today. Should work the whole body. Make sure that you have 2 blocks and a strap handy. Coming down onto your back, hands behind thighs, make a C with your spine and lower down slowly. Once you're all the way there, walk your feet towards you. Have your feet a short distance apart. Think about lengthening the pubic bone away from you, hip bones equal distance from armpits and floor. Interlace the fingers, face the palms away from us. Think about straightening out the elbows, pull the wrists and forearms apart as you squeeze the upper arms towards one another. If the elbows are on the flexible side, pull them apart a little bit. Reach the thumb edge of the wrist towards the ceiling. Think about dropping the ribs as you lengthen the pubic bone and take your arms towards overhead. Now you can pause at any point if you feel too much sensation or if you feel a significant lifting in the rib cage or any strain in the back. Pressing into the feet, lift the toes, lower the toes. Lie down easy. Now try to lift all the toes and see if you can tap just the big toes, keeping all the other toes up. Then press the big toes to the floor, lift all the others and hold. Even pressure on baby toe and big toe edge of the toe mound. Imagine you've got a block between the thighs that you're squeezing. Then nice and slow, bring the arms back in front of you, bring the palms to touch, swap the interlacing of the fingers, bring all the toes to the floor. Once again, face the palms towards the ceiling, touching the thumbs, pull the wrists and elbows apart. As you squeeze the upper arms towards one another, thumb edge of the wrist lifts away from you. Slowly going overhead, thinking ribs together and down, pubic bone lengthening. Upper arm bones are drawing towards their sockets as we try to draw the scapula slightly apart, the shoulder blades slightly apart, broadening the chest here. You can lengthen your neck if you feel any compression there. Now lifting all of the toes, try to tap all the toes except the big toes. Try to keep the big toes away from the ground. Now, if your pinky fingers touch the floor here, have them hover slightly. And then holding just big toes away from the floor. Slowly bring the arms back in front of you, bend the elbows, touch the palms, rest the arms. Relax your toes and then walk the soles of the feet together, knees wide, lengthen the flesh of the buttocks towards the heels. Think hip bones equal distance from floor, equal distance from shoulders. Pubic bone is lengthening away from abdomen. Bring your fingertips to touch your shoulders and start to make some forward circles with your elbows. Press the circumference of the soles together evenly, trying to pull the arches apart. And here, try to press each set of toes into one another evenly as well. Big toe to baby toe. Change direction with the circles. Think of the front ribs drawing together and rooting down. Maybe you can even lengthen the rib cage away from the pelvis a little bit here. Try to squeeze evenly with each of the digits. Thinking about spreading the fingers apart and squeezing them together simultaneously. I imagine that I'm bending each of the knuckles and straightening each of the knuckles as well. Now bring your elbows together and apart. Now elbows come towards the floor, elbows towards the ribs, towards the ears. Good. And taking the hands to the outer thighs, bring the knees together, lengthen flesh of buttocks towards heels once again, think pubic bone lengthening, and then walk your feet apart. And you can walk your feet apart a slight amount or a little bit more depending on what feels good. Outer edges of the feet are parallel. Lift all the toes and spread them widely, pressing them into the ground evenly. Think about squeezing the inner thighs together, trying to roll the inner groins towards the end of the mat. Ankles pulling apart as you continue to squeeze the groins. The thighs are working away from you, the hamstrings are lifting towards you, the calves are pressing away from you, the shins are lifting towards you. Eventually, you're not only squeezing the thighs together, but you're pulling the thighs apart as well. And this will create more sensation in the outer hips. Ribs are drawing together and rooting down. Maybe lengthen your ribs away from your pelvis. Bring your fingertips to touch the shoulders. Bring the elbows towards the ribs, towards the ears. Just a few more. Try not to allow the rib cage to change. Try not to let the pelvis change. Good. And then releasing your arms into a cactus shape. So what I'm talking about here is a 90-degree angle at the elbow. Elbow directly in line with shoulder, wrist directly over elbow. Now if this creates too much sensation at any point, you can stack blocks under the back of the hand, thinking about having quite a straight wrist. Again, I like to have a slight bend in each of the knuckles. Particularly useful if you're more mobile in the joints. Think about lengthening the elbows away from the shoulders, spreading the shoulder blades. Imagine you're sliding your feet away from you, you're equally sliding your feet towards you. But I find that sliding the feet away from you tends to create more sensation in the inner groins, more activity there, so it's a nice option to start with. And then once you find that, pulling them towards you just as much helps to engage more of the lower abdominals. 5 more breaths. And then slowly walking the feet back together. Draw the knees towards your chest, take your hands to your shins, go a little side to side. And making some circles. Change direction, change the interlacing of the hands. And side to side. Coming back to center, bringing the left foot to the ground, taking the hands over. Let's go behind the thigh, push your thigh away from you, pull the upper arm bones toward their sockets, think pubic bone lengthening, right hip bone lengthening away from right armpit, pulling the femur bones into the sockets. A little more deeply, straightening the right knee, bending the right knee. Now it's very much up to you how much you straighten your knee. It does not need to completely straighten. It might not. Both are correct. If you keep practicing, chances are good your hamstrings will become more flexible. If they are quite flexible, chances are keep practicing, they'll get stronger. So straightening as much as feels good when you're ready, pushing the thigh away from you, pulling upper arm bones deeper into sockets, but still spreading those shoulder blades a little bit. No contraction there. Pointing and flexing. And should you need more and pelvis is neutral, left leg can straighten here. It's not a necessity by any means, it's just a possibility. And some circles. And going the other way. And flexing, curling, pointing, flipping. Flexing, curling, pointing, flipping. Good. Now bending left knee. Releasing hands, taking right ankle to left knee. Pelvis is neutral, hip bones are equal distance from floor, equal distance from shoulders. If we want more, walking left foot closer. If the heel touches the buttocks and you're still wanting more, you're lengthening the inner groins, you're pulling those femurs into the pelvis, you're finding the outer trochanters, and you still want more. Left heel lifts, you can lift foot, hands or strap can come behind thigh, you can push your thigh away from you, equally pull upper arm bones toward sockets. And initially the shoulders will lift more here, so it's just a push and a pull, and eventually it changes. There is no rush, got our whole life to practice. And releasing, foot to the floor, arms beside, and start to inch your left foot away from you a little bit. And being mindful of that right knee, if you feel any pain or negative sensation, backing off. You can flex your foot or press the sole of the foot down. Flexing the foot's usually a little more comfortable. Both are nice. Think about lengthening the inner groin away from you during the abdomen toward the lower back, active feet. If the left leg straightens, there's still a slight bend, there's still a slight lift. And then slowly dragging that heel back towards you. Draw your knee towards you, open up the back of the knee, and bring your foot to the ground. Now draw your left knee towards you. Take your hands behind your thigh, push your thigh into your hands. Upper arm bones pull towards their sockets, straightening the knee, bending the knee. Pubic bone is lengthening, left hip bone lengthening away from left armpit, and straightening that left leg as much as feels available to you without strain. If you feel like, oh, the leg is shaking, back off, do less. More will be available in time. Pointing and flexing left ankle, remembering the option of the opposite leg straightening as well if you did on the other side. Think left hip bone not hiking up to the shoulder, but working it away from the shoulder. In my experience, more symmetry when practicing these sorts of postures makes a huge difference in getting rid of pain in the SI joints in particular and circles. So if that happens to be something you're suffering from, working on what we call a neutral pelvis will make a huge difference. Change direction. And flex, curl, point, and flip. Flex, curl, point, and flip. Bending right knee, releasing hands, taking left ankle to right knee. Think about lengthening pubic bone away from you, right hip bone pulling towards the floor, right femur bone pulling towards the floor as you take the left hip bone away from left armpit. But it's possible to overdo it, so don't go too far. Use your mind's eye. Concentrate on where those hip bones are, using the fingers as much as needed. If you're needing more, you can walk your foot closer to you, your heel touches your buttocks, and you still want more, heel might lift, foot can come on block, hands can be behind thighs, you're pushing your thighs away from you, you're trying to pull those upper arm bones toward their sockets. Same with those thigh bones, you're inserting them a little more deeply if you can into the hip sockets, you're finding the outer hips and squeezing them to some extent, maybe you pull them apart as well, both are useful. Releasing right foot to the ground, resting the arms, and then starting to inch the right foot away from you to some extent. And this might be more than enough, maybe going an inch or two away from you, thinking equal weight on both sides of the pelvis, just as usual. If you're wanting more, you can continue to walk the right foot farther. Either sole of the foot is resting or heel is resting. If you go for the heel resting, as you start to straighten the right leg, it's really important that you don't feel any strain in the knee. Making sure you have a slight bend in the knee, a slight dragging of the heel towards you. Think hip bones equal distance from the ground. Try to pull that left femur away from the floor as you pull the right femur toward the floor. And then dragging that heel back to you slowly. Pull the right thigh toward you, open up the back of the knee, and bring your foot back to the ground. Now from here we'll come into little bridge pose or Setu Bandha. You can do a block between your thighs if you fancy, otherwise arms beside you, pushing into your palms, your feet, your fingers, and so on. Spread your toes evenly. Think upper arm to the ceiling, forearm rolling to the floor, palms rooting down. Flesh of buttocks lengthens, you lift the pelvis, the lower back, the mid back, the upper back. Make sure not to turn your head in this one. It's as though the flesh of the buttocks lengthens and lifts, ribs draw together and root down as pelvis lifts more so. Pressing into the whole circumference of the palms. You can squeeze your fingers together, you can spread them, both are okay. Let's take 10 more breaths. And releasing the spine down to the ground, slowly, slowly, keeping even pressure in the arms as you go. Good, and then from there, either extending the legs or hugging the legs, Resting for a few breaths. Bending your knees, rolling to the side, pushing yourself up. Coming onto the hands and knees, toes tucked under. Inner upper arm forward, outer upper arm back, rounding the back and tucking the chin, pressing the floor away, and then gaze lifting, sit bones lifting, looking up. Spine rounding, chin tucking, pressing floor away, gaze lifting, sit bones lifting, looking up. Now, a common tendency here is to crunch the shoulders around the ears here. We want to avoid this, creating space in the neck. Same can happen when you're going into the back bend. You can start to, kind of wear your shoulders like earrings, and we want to avoid this by broadening the chest, broadening the upper back, upper arm bones sinking more into sockets. And there's a strong lifting of the abdomen here, no matter how far you go. Spine rounding, chin tucking, pressing floor away, gaze lifting, sit bones lifting, looking up. Just a few more. And then neutral spine, push into the tops of the feet, pointed feet, and circles with the hips. See if you can drag the heels away from you slightly, creating a little bit of a lift in the ankle is fantastic here. Change direction with your circles. And stopping with your circles, tuck your toes, bring your hips towards your heels. Pardon me. So extended child's pose or dog preparation. Some people call it puppy dog pose. This one's quite nice. If it's too intense, you can stack the fists or palms under the forehead. If you want more, the knees can lift. I suggest lifting the knees quite a small amount and focusing on lengthening the spine and lifting the forearms. If that feels quite nice, working on a straighter knee is great as well. And this changes the pose. Both are correct. And it's always good to experiment. Some days working with straighter knees, some days working with more bent knees, and more extension in the spine. The neck should be quite relaxed in this version. Just 5 more breaths. And then allowing the knees to rest, feet pointed. Either child's pose with your arms extended. It's really important here that the forehead is supported and the big toes are touching. So you can also stack the palms or the fists under the head. A nice version with the block is to go medium height with just fingertips on block, elbows quite wide, or low height. One will feel better than the other. It's up to you to experiment and see what feels good on each day. All right, and then from here we'll come forward, stretch out the right toes, stretch out the left toes. Then we're gonna work on a lunge. So blocks can be at the highest height here, about as wide as your mat. Fingers on the blocks, knees and ankles a hip's distance apart. Right foot steps forward between the blocks. Left knee walks back a little. We want our front shin to be relatively straight. Chest is lifting, belly is lifting. Pardon. And then lifting the left thigh if you're wanting more. Concentrating on one spot. Looking down or forward, depending on what feels good for the neck. If you want more, you can take your hands to your thigh, or take your hands to your hips, or extend the arms. 10 more breaths. Looking up is a great option too. Releasing the hands to the thigh, to the blocks, lower your knee. Take the hips back, step the foot back, step your opposite foot forward. Toes are tucked, spine is lengthening, abdomen lifting, and then right knee lifting if that's what you did on the other side. And you can always experiment lifting the knee for a brief period and then bring it back down. These are all good options. If you need more, your hands can come to your thigh, your hands can come to your hips, or you can extend the arms. In this case, you're thinking ribs together and rooting back and up. You can look up if you fancy. 10 more breaths. And releasing hands to thigh, hands to blocks, lower your knee, hips go back, foot goes back. And then taking a child's pose. Stacking the fists under the head, or going for the medium height of the block, just the palms on the blocks, and slide those blocks away from you. Head does not rest in this version, head hangs. Think inner upper arm to the ceiling, outer upper arm to the floor, as you squeeze with palms and fingers. Make sure only your palms and fingers are on the blocks. This is more effective than if the forearms touch it. Pardon me. Press into the tops of the feet, the calves, the shins. Think about lengthening the hip creases away from the armpits, broadening the upper back and the chest here. Rib cage and abdomen are lifting and lengthening away from the pelvis perhaps. As you hold, perhaps you'll slide the blocks slightly farther. 5 more breaths. Try to keep the base of the index finger from lifting. And coming forward, back onto the first height of that block, or the highest height. Toes tucked under, right foot steps forward, left knee walks back, foot pointed. If you want more, your hands can come to your thigh. If you still want more, hands can come to hips. Or you can reach your arms outside your ears and look up. All of these versions are nice. And keep in mind, if you're looking for more difficulty, you don't have to use the blocks. You can step forward and back with no blocks. And it will be a little more difficult for your core and your balance. 10 more breaths. Abdomen lengthening, ribs connecting. And if your shoulders are tight, I recommend the version I'm demonstrating right now with your hands on your hips and your elbows squeezing towards one another. Then you can use the hands to press the pelvis a bit forward as you take the spine up and back. Quite nice for the thoracic spine in particular. All right, and then hands coming back to thigh, back to blocks, hips going back, foot going back, and opposite foot forward. Take your time and remember your options. You can step forward like I just demonstrated, or you can step forward and back with your hands on your hips. And you can see, it's much more difficult to maintain balance, but it's possible, right? And even just stepping forward and back is a fantastic way to work your body. Hands can come to thigh if you like, hands can come to hips if you like. You can extend the arms outside the ears, you can look up. But as they say, if you're working on the spine, the shoulders and so on, hands on hips is a really good variation. I highly recommend. Thinking left hip back, right hip forward, lengthening the ribs and the spine away from the pelvis if you can. 10 more breaths. Think very spread toes, very active feet. You can find a lift in the ankle and the back leg in these low lunges if you prefer. It's more traditional to take the whole ankle down, but both are really helpful, right? And the lifted ankle really informs the flat ankle eventually. Just in case you're curious, this posture in Sanskrit is called Ekapadasana. All right, when you're ready, hands will come to thigh, hands will come to blocks, you'll tuck your toes, you'll take your hips back, you'll take your foot back. And then again, child's pose, medium height of block, fingers and palms on blocks, not the rest of the body. Hips come towards your heels, knees together or apart. And then ears between the biceps. If you want more difficulty, fingers squeeze together on top of blocks, less difficulty wrapping fingers around blocks. Both are quite nice. Think inner upper arm to the ceiling, outer upper arm to the floor. Elbows pull apart as you lift the forearms. You're pressing down with the palms, but you're lifting the forearms here. And this creates more opening in the armpit and the upper back. Imagine the shoulder blades could pull apart as you lengthen the rib cage and the lower abdomen away from the pelvis. It's as though you're lifting and broadening the rib cage and chest here. And then releasing one hand and then the other, coming up, placing your blocks to the side. Feet and knees at hips distance apart. Now 2 options for this one. You can either repeat right ankle, left knee, just like we did before. Fabulous. Or you can have the knees and ankles at hips distance, draw right knee to right wrist, walk right foot in front of left thigh, foot pointed, and then walk your left knee back. Foot pointed, and perhaps lower to the elbows, or stack the palms under the head. Lengthening the rib cage away from the pelvis is fantastic here. Pushing into the tops of the feet, thinking right hip bone back, left hip bone forward. And coming back onto those elbows, either extending the spine here or coming into the palms, maybe walking the hands slightly farther back to find more length in the spine. And then tucking the toes under, walk your knee forward, take your right knee back, open up the back of the knee, bring your knee to the floor. Now drawing left knee to left wrist, or if you're on your back, bring your ankle to your knee on the other side. Foot pointed, foot in front of thigh, walk your right knee back. When there's no more space, foot pointed, thinking left hip back, right hip forward, lengthening the rib cage away from the pelvis, and slowly coming forward. You can stay on your elbows, you can stack the palms or the fists under the head, place a block under the head. And coming back up, coming onto your palms, either staying right here or coming a little bit farther back if you like, maybe 1 hand's distance or 2 at the most. Lengthening spine, lifting abdomen, focusing right hip forward, left hip back. Pushing into your feet is crucial here. Pigeon is a fabulous posture for the hips, the spine. However, you don't want to be messing around with your knees, so make sure you don't feel them at all. If you do, working on more, basically you want to work on hip openers that do not bear weight on the knee. So if you're experiencing any sensation in your knee, better to back off to other hip openers, such as the one I'm suggesting on your back here as an alternative. All right, and then toes tuck under, walk your knee forward, take your shin back, open up the back of the leg, release. Now from here, we'll come onto our seat. We're gonna come down nice and slow. Once you're all the way there. All right, so we're gonna do a little quad stretch. I'll start on the left side. So rolling onto the left side of the body, you can either have your elbow bent or arm straight, both are nice. Thighs perpendicular to abdomen, feet right under those knees. Fingertips can be on the ground in front of you, or they can be on your hip. Think about lifting the right leg, foot, knee, and hip level. Bring that thigh forward. Bring the thigh back, bring the thigh forward, bring the thigh back. And you could work with a straight arm or a little cushion under your head as well. Those would all be good options. And then taking it back to hold. And either staying here, taking a strap over the sole of the foot or the ankle, or grabbing the foot or ankle yourself. Pushing and pulling. Maybe taking the heel towards the buttocks, maybe taking the thigh back. Arm can be straight, elbow can be bent, both are nice. Thighs perpendicular to abdomen, feet right underneath the knees, hand can be on hip or in front of you. Lifting your leg, taking your thigh towards your abdomen, taking your heel towards your buttocks. Thigh towards abdomen, heel towards buttocks. Thigh to abdomen, heel towards buttocks. And then pointing. You can either clasp with your foot or with your hand, with your strap. You can hang out here. If it's really hard to grab your foot, chances are really good your body's not ready for it yet. And if you rush it, you'll hurt yourself. So it's better to do less rather than more. If it feels really comfortable to grab it, fine, go for it. But if it feels painful and you grab it, not a good call, not worth it. If you push your foot into your hand or into your strap and it's painful, that's an indication your body needs less. So holding without the hand or without the strap is better right now. But if it does feel good, you can point, you can draw the heel to the seat. As long as you're kicking your foot into your hand, it should be just fine. You just don't want to be poking the knee. It's just not necessary. And then releasing, stacking, and then we'll roll onto our back. So from here, finish off with a twist. Make sure you've got space beside you. Stretch out the arms, push into your feet, lift your hips, take them to your right, cross right leg on top, squeeze the legs firmly. Ankles can hook if that's appropriate for your body. Press into the arms and slowly bring your legs towards your left side. And you can always cozy one of those blocks right up here against that hip if you find your right shoulder lifts. If you're looking for more here, push into that left elbow, lengthen the left shoulder, left ribs to the left, and then go ahead and extend those arms once again. It's as though you're rolling the right side of the ribs to the left and the left side of the ribs to the right. Left ribs are lifting to the ceiling, right ribs are rooting towards the floor. Once you're there, the ribs are rooting together, rooting down, back rib cage is broadening. And that's a lot of info when it comes to the ribs, so just take what makes sense, leave what doesn't. And if you keep working on it, eventually all of those connections will come to you. You're thinking about drawing the lower abdomen toward the lower back. The skin of the abdomen also slides from left to right here. And eventually you can feel quite a bit of movement there in the organs as well. You're thinking right hip bone away from right armpit, lengthening in this direction. Active elbows, active fingertips. It's perfectly fine for the back of the hand to lift. It might. Imagine the scapula can pull apart. Imagine the front of the chest could broaden slightly. If all of that's quite comfortable, the gaze can turn. If it's not comfortable, we don't turn the gaze yet. If the shoulders aren't completely down, it's not worth it. Better to keep the gaze in center. Or if there's any strain or pulling or tugging, something just doesn't feel good. Again, keep the gaze at the ceiling. Coming back to center slowly, firing up those legs. Once you're there, uncrossing, straightening out spine. And then when you're ready, take your hips to the left. Cross the left leg on top, remembering the option of keeping the legs uncrossed as well, or hooking ankle, depending on what's right for you. Think left hip bone away from left armpit, squeeze those legs, and slowly go towards your right side. If the shoulder lifts, remember you can support with a block right underneath that right hip, quite close to the hip or under the thighs, it would be more precise. If you need more, you'll bend your right elbow, you'll walk your right shoulder, right ribs towards the right a bit more, extending the arm once you arrive. You're thinking of the right abdomen working towards the left, right ribs towards the left, left ribs sinking towards the floor as the right ribs lengthen away from the floor. You can think of the entire rib cage lengthening away from the pelvis as the pelvis lengthens towards the end of the mat. The whole lower abdomen draws toward the lower back. It's as though we're broadening that space. Inner thighs are squeezing together. Outer thighs are pulling apart. There's a lot of activity occurring in even the most, simple or basic of postures. There's nothing simple about it. There's nothing basic about it. What makes an asana or a posture advanced is how much your mind is involved in the effort. 5 more deep breaths. Returning your gaze to center if you turned it, bringing the legs back to center, straightening out the spine, uncrossing the legs, and then coming into your Shavasana. And I'll leave Shavasana to you. Take your time and make sure you rest. I would say at least 5 minutes. However, more traditional, more effective for at least 7 to 15 minutes. But if you can manage 10 minutes, you're good to go. All right, have a great rest of your day. Namaste.